You have probably heard this one. Never buy an HDB flat with a short lease. That's because the value erodes to zero at expiry, the CPF that you can use gets restricted, your loan tenure shrinks, and the price growth is lower than newer flats. While all of that is true, if you just take that advice blindly, it could cost you over hundreds of thousands of dollars. In this video, I will go through tens of thousands of HDB resale transactions to find out why people still choose to buy older HDB flats, what the real risks are, what the math actually says, and most importantly, is it actually worth buying short-lease HDB flats? Let's not waste any time and let's jump right in. Now, the first reason, and probably most obvious reason why most people go for older flats is simply because older flats are generally cheaper. Looking at HDB resale transactions from January 2025 to April 2026, I found that shorter lease flats were selling at about 24% discounts per square meter versus the newer flats. On a typical 4-room flat, that gap works out to around $163,000 less, and in some transactions, that can be closer to $300,000. What is also interesting is that once a flat drops below 70 years remaining, the prices starts to flatten out. Looking at the red bars, they are all roughly the same height. This tells us that the market barely distinguishes between a flat with 70 years left and one with 40 years left. So when you are buying a flat with under 70 years left, you are not really paying extra for these additional years of lease. The second reason is location. Most, if not all of these older flats are sitting in mature estates, places like Queenstown, Toa Payoh, Bishan, and Kallang. You get MRT stations outside the door, hawker centers you can walk to, and multiple schools right within the estates. These are the kinds of neighborhoods that BTO projects and even newer resale flats just cannot match yet. Sure, Tengah and Yishun North will get there, but probably not for another 10 years, if you're lucky. Going back to the earlier chart, if we just look at the median resale price for mature estates only, short lease in mature estates are priced almost the same as short lease flats everywhere else. So you can be in Queenstown or Toa Payoh and still get in at roughly the same price as anywhere else. Meaning when it comes to older flats, you can actually get the convenience that comes with the location without really paying too much for it. The third reason is space. Older flats were built with yards, storerooms, and sometimes even bay windows. Meanwhile, newer BTOs have quietly removed most of these, and the actual floor area has shrunk too. For example, an average 4-room HDB back in the 1980s was around 105 square meters. Today, a 4-room BTO is closer to 90 square meters. That is about 14% less floor space, which is basically the size of a master bedroom. And the last reason, which people tend to undervalue, is the financial flexibility. A smaller mortgage means earlier financial freedom. It also means you have more room just in case something happens, whether it's a job loss, an interest rate hike, or a rough patch. Basically, you are not one payslip away from a crisis. And one way to protect that breathing room is to make sure you are actually on the best mortgage rate available. Because if you are overpaying by even 0.5% of a 500k loan, that can easily add up to 20k over the life of your loan. That's where Cashew.sg comes in. Instead of having to manually dig through different bank websites or spending hours calling hotlines just to ask for rates, with just a few inputs, Cashew helps you compare the best loan packages across multiple banks all in one place. And the best part, this service is completely free. There are no hidden charges or fees involved because Cashew earns its commission from the banks and not from you. So you get all the benefits without paying a single cent. And if you ever have questions, you can use the AI chatbot to chat loan rates, understand the fine print, or just get a bit of refinancing advice. It's like having a friendly mortgage consultant on standby 24/7 without the awkward sales pressure. So if you want to save on your mortgage loan, check out Cashew.sg using my link down below to see how much you can save today. Now, let's talk about all the downsides that come with buying older flats. The first downside is that older flats tend to lose value much faster than you might think. And nothing, not even location, nor renovation, nor government upgrading can stop it from eventually reaching zero. This is also known as the ballast curve. A brand new 99-year lease is worth 96% of freehold value. By the time 60 years are left, it drops to 80%. At 30 years remaining, 60%. At 15 years, 40%. And by the time it reaches expiry, 0. Notice that the drop is not even. Going from 99 years to 60 years, you only lose 16 percentage points over nearly 40 years. But from 60 years to 30 years, you lose another 20 percentage points in just 30 years. Then from 30 down to 15 years, it's another 20 points gone in just 15 years. In other words, the curve gets steeper and steeper the closer you get to zero. And you can see this in actual resale prices. Because the lease is running down, older flats simply have less room to grow. Between 2014 and mid-2025, older flats appreciated by only 17%. In contrast, younger flats appreciated by 47%. While that doesn't show an outright collapse in older flat prices, it does confirm that appreciation is slowing. Basically, the older the block, the more muted the gains. And this is consistent across 3 rooms, 4 rooms, and even 5-room flats. The second downside is CPF restrictions. The rule is simple. You can only use the full amount of your CPF if the remaining lease covers the youngest buyer in the household all the way to age 95. But if it falls short, the amount of CPF that you can use gets prorated or even cut off entirely. Take Xiaoming for example. He is 36 years old and he found a flat for 455k but with 50 years remaining. To get full CPF access, the lease needs to cover him to age 95, which means he needs at least 59 years remaining. But because he only has 50 years of lease left, his CPF gets prorated to about 77% of what he would normally be allowed to use. This means his cash outlay goes from roughly 75k to around 153k. That is 78k more in cash he needs to fork out. Not just that, grants like the enhanced CPF housing grants follow the same proration formula. This means Xiaoming will also get less of it if he had bought a longer lease flat. But wait, there's more. Depending on the lease, the amount of money that you can borrow is also affected. Normally, you can borrow up to 75% of the property value on an HDB loan. But if the lease falls short, the ceiling gets prorated as well. So if Xiaoming had just gone for a 99-year flat that cost 450k, he would get the full 75% LTV and would be able to borrow 375k. But if he went for a shorter lease flat that only covers him to age 86, his maximum loan would get prorated down to about 58%, dropping from 375k to roughly 261k, meaning he needs substantially more cash upfront just to close the deal. The third downside is inheritance. Say you buy a flat with 50 years left and pass it down with 10 years remaining. At that point, barely anyone can buy it from your loved ones because the buyer cannot use CPF, cannot get a bank loan, and cannot qualify for any grants. At that point, you are not leaving them with an asset. You are leaving them with an HDB flat that nobody wants. And if your child already owns an HDB flat, that's even worse because they cannot even keep it, since Singapore rules says that you can only own one HDB at a time. So they are forced to sell at the worst possible time to the smallest possible pool of buyers. The fourth downside is that selling your short-lease flat gets harder every year. Right now, the 1970s and 1980s cohort alone makes up 42% of all HDB flats, and they are all aging in the restriction territory around the same time. So when you go to sell, you'll be up against a large supply of similar short-lease flats, all chasing the same restricted pool of buyers who have enough lease coverage, enough CPF, and enough borrowing power to actually close the deal. And the longer you hold, the smaller that buyer pool gets. Now, while all of those downsides are real, here's where it might actually make sense to buy a short lease flat. Say, you are looking at 2 flats. One has a long lease and sells for 690k. The other is an older flat with an asking price of 520k. By going for the older flat, you save 42.5k upfront and $578 every month on mortgage. You take all of that and put it into an index fund. Assuming an 8% return a year, you're ahead from the very first year, and the gap keeps widening. And by year 20, you are 293k ahead. Now I know what you're thinking. What about lease decay? Wouldn't that eat away at the short lease flat faster? Fair question. When you factor in lease decay, the short lease buyer's net worth drops a bit and the gap narrows. But even so, the short lease buyer is still ahead as compared to the long lease buyer. But here's the part where most people miss. While flat equity looks good on paper, you can't actually spend it. To unlock its value, you need to sell a flat, which means moving out, paying transaction costs, while repaying CPF with accrued interest. Meanwhile, the investment portfolio is liquid from day one. You can use it for an emergency, a medical bill, a business opportunity, or even an early retirement. So even as the lease decay compresses the flat's paper value, the accessible portion of the net worth is still decisively ahead. Or, as they like to say, buy term, invest the rest. But of course, all of this assumes that you're actually going to invest the difference. If all of that extra money goes to your lifestyle spending instead of an index fund, then honestly, you have been better off just buying the long lease flats. So, is a shorter lease flat worth buying? The downsides are real, whether it is lease decay, CPF restrictions, a shrinking buyer pool, and nothing much to pass down. But if you go in with your eyes open and you actually invest the difference, the answer is yes. However, if you don't invest the difference, the conventional wisdom is right, aka buy the longest lease you can afford. If this helped you think about your HDB decision more clearly, hit the like button, subscribe for more Singapore personal finance content, and I will see you in the next one.